Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 330 with myself, Sarah Monroe, and this week's guest, Ash Borland. We've got a lot of topics we're going to talk with you about today in terms of social media. There certainly is a lot every single week. And this week, we're primarily going to be talking about Instagram. And Instagram they've released a lot of updates. I mean, every month there's like 10 or 12 updates at times. And so what we like to do at Social Chefs is we like to bring you the latest and greatest news. And in this case, we're going to be talking about Instagram content management tools that they've launched this week. But with that, I'm going to go and bring on Sarah. We're going to have her introduce our guest, and we're going to kick things off. So Sarah, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great and happy Safer Internet Day. Well, 2 days ago, but Safer Internet Week with all of the announcements that seem to be rolling around having a safer internet. And some of it has to do with Instagram. So, let's just bring on our guest, Ash Borland. He is the host of Mortgage Marketing Podcast with Ash Borland. And he says he's obsessed with content marketing and podcasting. So welcome, Ash. Did I introduce you? Did I cover everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's everything that people need to be without me being self-indulgent. Absolutely.
It's okay to be self-indulgent. That's
well, we'll be here for the whole hour and I'll just tell you my life story. No, I'm interested.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for having me on, guys. I'm really excited.
Anytime. So this is gonna be a lot of fun, right, Sarah? I mean, we got lots of topics to talk about.
It is.
Let me know. You want to kick things off? What do you want to do?
Yeah, let's kick things off with Instagram. And what I really appreciate, Ash, is that you're going to bring in some of the perspective of what's happening in the UK and the EU. So this is really interesting. There's been a lot of talk about what's been going on with Meta and Meta's platforms. But first and foremost, Instagram, our friend, I want to call him Uncle Adam now, Adam Mosseri, who has these weekly reels. He just sits down and chats with the camera. It seems like, it's a little time with Uncle Adam. So he talked about what Instagram is doing in recognition, not just in recognition of Safer Internet Day, but just in general where the platform is going. And I really recommend that you check out his Instagram account and the resources that he mentions in that reel this week, because there are different guides and content and resources that they are producing, that they've worked with countries all around the world to provide resources to people about being safer on the internet. Something that we talked about last week too. Actually, we've talked about it a little bit, our guides for parents. And so they've actually worked with some NGOs in Ireland and Europe and the United States to put together some guides to help parents navigate these seas of internet safety. But let's jump into their big announcement about security and activity. So one thing that they're rolling out is security checkups. If you haven't really been checking up on your security on your social media accounts, you really should. And they're giving sort of a step-by-step process to find this. So you find this, if you're on your profile page, you'll see the little hamburger, the little 3 lines. You can go into your settings and check off security. What's really interesting, I want to say, is this new 2-factor authentication that they are rolling out. Maybe they've had it before and I just haven't paid attention, but they are giving you other options than one cell phone number to do your two-factor authentication for an account. This is huge for anybody who has to be the one cell phone that gets the 2-factor authentication for people to log into an Instagram account. So they're going to let you have multiple people across different devices use Duo Mobile or Google Authenticator to use for two-factor authentication. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know about anybody else, but that's great because I work with teams and having that is really critical. A next one that they're going to do is to give you friends that you can designate to confirm your identity. So this is just in the early stages right now. They haven't quite rolled it out. They say it's coming soon. We know how long that takes. But you're going to be able to identify 2 friends who can confirm your identity. They have to do it within 24 hours of you asking. But this, I think, is going to save a ton of time for anybody who has had their accounts compromised. Is going to save a ton of time for customer service with Meta and specifically the Instagram team, so that people can get back into their accounts a little more DIY for that. Another piece is your activity. And this is something I am really, really excited about. This is a feature that I use on Facebook at least once a week, looking into what have I liked or commented on, because usually what happens is I think, what was that? Someone I wrote a comment or I liked something and I want to find it again. So they're going to give you a chance to review your activity. Now, from a security standpoint, this is giving you the option to bulk delete any kind of stories, posts, reels, or video that you want to remove from your profile. It's also going to let you look at all of your interactions. You can sort by date. You can search comments. There's going to be a search history in addition to your likes and comments and the links that you visited. So I find this really helpful. I do save a lot of stuff on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm too lazy to really use the collections feature. So I just have this big mass of stuff. So what's great is that this is going to be much more discoverable, searchable within what you've done. So it sounds like it's going to be similar to Facebook. Really looking forward to having this. I keep checking. I check 3 times a day since I've seen this announcement. Lastly, reported content. So they're going to give you more of a control panel on the content that you report, but also the content that's been reported on your account. So this is content that's not compliant with the community guidelines for Instagram. So they are letting you know what you have reported. It's also what's been reported on you. You can ask for a review of whatever's been reported. And when you report content, just a quick reminder, when you report content on Instagram, it is anonymous. Unless it's a copyright violation, and then you do have to report yourself as the copyright holder of a particular piece of content. So one thing that I think is really, really interesting about their report feature, and interesting for the trolls to know out there, is that it's not the number of times that a post or a video or a reel or a piece of content is reported. It's whether or not it violates the rules. So we've talked on this show about these groups of people who just spam social media content to try to get it taken down. And Instagram is buried in their blog post about this, but they did make a point of saying, we do review the content and it has to violate the rules. It's not the number of times that something's been reported. So I think it's really interesting. Like I said, I'm really excited about the Your Activity tab, but let's hear from Christian and Ash about what you guys think about this.
I got to say, some of this stuff is some of these topics are topics that I actually covered years ago in terms of reporting accounts and things like that. And I like how they're starting to now build some of these systems in. They're starting to realize, you know what, hey, I like the fact that they're adding a content management tool here, because it needs to be if everything is on mobile, you need to make it easy for people to get to and find things. They don't need to be scrolling, right? So I like that they're adding those tools. I like the fact, though, that they're also rolling out the feature where you can collaborate. And I say collaborate, and maybe it's not collaboration, but where you can work with your friends. For example, there's too many times where somebody's reached out and they've said, hey, I've had an issue. They've reached out to us at Social Chefs with an issue about, oh, my account got locked. And the only thing you could have given them was, well, there's a form you can go fill out. There's a help center. and you may get a response, but you very likely will not. And I like the fact that now you can designate people to work with. And that, again, that comes back to, and you and I've talked about this, Sarah, we've talked about like, it's about building relationships.
Right. Well, remember those friends, those are people who can confirm your identity.
Yeah.
Right. So not so much collaborators, if that's what you're
exactly
thinking.
right. No, I was thinking more
Yeah.
along the lines of like, I guess you may want to involve your parents. I'm not sure if that's who you want to involve. I'm just thinking because from a social media perspective, maybe you don't involve parents. It might be a lot more work than it. Yeah.
But you involve people who use the platform, right?
Yes.
Your closest friends who use the platform. So what do you think, Ash?
I absolutely love it. So I was sat there with like wide-eyed watching you going, oh, this is brilliant. I love some of this stuff. For me, I love the activity tab. And the reason why I cannot stand, when you find something good and then I go and speak to my wife, I'm like, oh, I saw this thing today and I commented on it or I liked, and I can't find it. And that is the hardest thing I find with Instagram. Anything with Meta, really. Facebook is a similar thing where it's kind of, if it's gone, it's gone, and I absolutely love LinkedIn. Have had this for a long time where you can go back through and find it. So I absolutely love that. It was getting me very excited about things where I can, because I do it on YouTube and you bookmark it. You go, I like that. And I'm going to come back to it later. So that ability as a user, apart from all the security stuff, is one, should have been a long time ago. Like, I think it's a brilliant thing, but like, I'm not going to celebrate something that should have been here 2-3 years ago. But do you know what I mean? Well done, Meta. But at the same time, like, I think some of those features are brilliant as a user experience, definitely.
And you're absolutely right. Some of these things are things that, they really should have already been there, but I'm glad that they're kind of coming back to it, I guess, to put them in place now. So, I mean, they're realizing, hey, things need to be fixed. Some things need to be adjusted and fixed. So.
Right. And like you said, LinkedIn's let you do it. YouTube has let you do it. Facebook forever. Facebook has had it for as long as I can remember. Facebook having it, where you can go back and see, oh, what did I comment on last week that I want to revisit? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And then from the security aspect, it's always good practice to check over your security. And I don't know if you two work with Teams, but that having that 2-factor authentication to be able to be used on different devices or multiple people, I think is going to be really helpful.
2-factor authentication. Yeah, go ahead, Ash.
No, yeah. So there's nothing worse than working with a team and then having to text the person who's on there going, can you please give me the authentication code or whatever? I have it all the time. So yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful idea.
And here's the thing, that also comes back to like having a system of, for example, if there's a way to designate somebody who is if there's a better method, I guess, for a team, like better team management, I think, so that you don't have to necessarily do that all the time. The 2-factor authentication, you should still have that. I mean, I think everyone should set that up, even though it's like, oh, well, it's an extra step I have to do. Yeah. But like, it's for your security of your account. So, because then it means it's going to be easier. Because then if you have it set up, you then don't have to. I'm going to say you don't have to worry about, but you may run into issues, where like you didn't have it set up, then you got to figure out, well, how do I get access to my account? You may not have to go and talk to other people and have them help you get your account unlocked and things like that. It's a safety measure, so it's well worth doing.
Exactly. So, well, hey, sticking with Instagram news, there is another content feature that has me excited too. And that is and this is being hinted at and tested. It's not every account has it, but I have talked to a lot of people who have it. And that is, you're going to be able to turn your highlights, your story highlights, into reels. So you'll be, especially if they're stills, you'll be able to make a little video of your story highlights. I find this really awesome feature, especially for people who have put a lot of time into creating a story that really tells a story. I have a couple of clients that one's a garden center, and they have these beautiful stories that they put together, spend a lot of time thinking about it, do a lot of work to make them look good and branded colors and all this other kind of stuff. And then it just sort of lives in their highlights. And and no one really goes back to them, right? So now you can put together a reel and have it be part of your reel feed. And what we love about reels, right, is that they're discoverable. I have to say, I put up a reel yesterday and today, and the amount of discovery that it's gotten. I have a teeny tiny personal Instagram account, and people are liking it and commenting on it, who aren't in any way, shape, or form connected with me. So this is great that your stories are going to have this discoverability because it becomes a reel. And it's possible that reels may increase to 90 seconds. That's another part of this announcement. So moving up from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. And I just think it's going to be a great, I'm really loving the reel content on Instagram. And I think this is going to be a great asset to that and have more people using it, especially more brands using it. When people don't know, what do I put into a reel? It's like, well, I've already built these beautiful stories over the last year. Let me make those into reels. So,
and it looks like, I got to say, it looks like it's very easy to do. Based off of what you were showing. I mean, you literally just, you make your story content, and then you just simply click on the icon that we have here. Let me pull it back up. You click on this bottom icon, and then that's going to help you then go in and bring some suggested audio and help you whatnot with creating that content.
Right.
So, and remember, you're doing this from a mobile phone. This is the other cool thing. This is all from a mobile phone.
Yeah. And that's, I believe that screenshot is from a highlight, not from your actual story panel, but from your highlight panel. And you'll see that little reel button. Like I said, I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. No,
what do you think, Ash?
I think it's brilliant. It's been something, my wife is a content creator as well as me, and it's been something we've always been going back and forth on recently when reels came in, as to, she heavily uses stories and highlights. And she said, I'm just getting to this point where I'm doubling up on content. And she was like, and what do I do? And she was actually downloading it and then trying to repurpose it. And that feature I think is awesome. And I also, because it solves that problem, because because it is heavily, there's a lot of creators out there who are heavily in stories and heavily in the highlights, reels and stuff. And that's where they're primarily making content. And actually they then upload, maybe one post to the grid a week just to keep that going. I think it's awesome. Any way you can make content easier to repurpose, easier for the user to do, is a win-win for me. It doesn't have to be complicated. So I absolutely love that. Not sure about the 90 seconds on the reels, but yeah.
I gotta say, I like the fact that, you mentioned that that it makes it easier for people to repurpose, because that is one of the biggest things. Whether you're doing live streaming or pre-recorded video, you should really be trying to repurpose your content. And what a lot of people do is they do one piece of content and then they're either on to the next one, or they do one piece of content and then they spend so much time trying to repurpose the other one. For example, if this is a 1 hour show, they use 1 hour on the show and then they have to go watch it. And that's an extra hour plus, because it's not 1 hour. And so, it just makes it easier to help, cut up that content into bits and pieces.
Right. So. And remember, stories used to be the shiny object, right? All the platforms, when they have the shiny object, that's what gets the attention. That's what gets the little bit of an algorithm boost. So stories for a long time were that algorithm boost. Now it's reels. And now they're saying, okay, we recognize you all made these beautiful stories. Now you can make them into reels in a very simple way. I think I was reading on social media today about this announcement as well, and they kind of positioned it as Instagram and YouTube, especially another way of going after TikTok is to keep people on Instagram. You have this great content. Here's a way to repurpose it. And also mentioned that, we talk about TikTok being this huge thing and Instagram being this huge thing. They're really looking at the emerging markets like India, where Instagram is having a huge growth and other platforms like TikTok aren't. And with Instagram and YouTube Shorts having better monetization, this may actually be Reels and Shorts with that monetization, may be a stronger player against TikTok with this.
Very possible, yeah.
I think it is. I've from day one have believed it is. I really do. I think there's a lot of issue going on with TikTok now with the creator fund. And there's a lot's kicking off now because of this, because there's just less people making less money because they've not got the monetization. So I think all the moves that Instagram and YouTube and Google, for example, Meta can do, I think this is the final stretch. You know, who has the most functionality, and those two platforms have the user base. They have the ability to make, as you say, repurpose content. You're going to go there. We saw it with Snapchat. I mean, I'm sorry, but you saw it with Snapchat. Once the feature was incorporated into somewhere where other content was already existing, people will navigate to the place they've already got a following.
Yeah.
It just makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And how are YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels doing in the UK? I mean, is it a bigger thing? Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, YouTube Shorts has been amazing. I do daily shorts, and it has grown my channel, and it's got me brand deals and things. So I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's an interesting one. I consume a lot of YouTube Shorts, but it is because I'm in that. But when I speak to people, they don't really know it's there. I think it is, but I think it's something not to ignore, because what I've noticed with my own consumer habits, and definitely my wife's and my friends and family, as I said, in the UK, we're a little bit behind the US in regards to content and social, but it's definitely like, it's kind of cutting a lot of the fluff from some of the creators who I really enjoyed, but they were doing a 5-minute video. Some of these guys can do 1-minute videos, and I'll consume 10 or 11 of them. They're getting way more watch time from me from doing that. And I think it is it's something that I would definitely be using, but they seem to be different. What I've noticed with shorts compared to reels is that they are different. There's a whole different way of approaching them. And the ones that are doing well, the shorts that are doing well in YouTube, what I've noticed are like short YouTube videos. They're like short, explain it. But whereas with reels, it seems to be more like TikTok content, you know, more of that quick throwaway type of content. So I think they're
right.
I don't know where it'll go, but my own personal prediction of this, I was chatting to somebody about this recently. I think they'll split into, I think YouTube will nail that whole searchable weird thing with that. And I think they'll morph over the next year into something different, because they are very different in style.
Right. Right. And I've seen a decrease in the TikTok content showing up on both YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, that it is actually Instagram Reels. And that's because they've rolled out so many great new tools and music and things that you can use with it. So I think it's definitely improving, and the algorithm knows me much better.
Yeah.
Much better. Yeah.
That's the only thing I have not against, but the 90-second thing, just to touch on that, is I don't think it's a smart move. And I think for two reasons. I think one, from a TikTok point of view, 3-minute videos have absolutely failed. Like they are terrible. Apart from, there's a very few creators I know on TikTok who can make them work, because the platform isn't built for that. They're taking something and changing it. So I don't think that's a good idea. And then, as Christian was saying earlier about repurposing, from my point of view, if you've got a platform, they all have a minute. The issue that I had with the Reels, and if you guys had the thing when they did the 30-second cap, that was really annoying, because you couldn't repurpose that content across the other two that had a 1-minute cap. So when all of a sudden you start making 90-second videos, they don't fall into your YouTube short category. They will fall into TikTok, but they're not going to perform very well. So I think my opinion with that would be, even if it's there, it doesn't mean you should use it, because it doesn't fit into the strategy of the repurposability, which is what I think short form vertical content is just so good, because you can put it across all these three platforms if you record it natively on your own device, and no one would know. So it's a very, I think it's a funny one.
Well, both Instagram and YouTube, well, Facebook for that matter too, right? They have longer form video that you can use, right? You've got the short little reels, but then you can do the longer video. And I noticed probably at least a year ago, a lot of TikTokers were moving over to YouTube for longer content. Their followers wanted to see more from them, or hear more of a narrative from them, or have some behind the scenes content. And so a lot of TikTokers started YouTube channels, and they just exploded.
Yeah.
So what's great about IG video, they're now calling it a video. I've noticed that the vernacular's changed on my dashboards when I'm trying to upload a video. It doesn't say IGTV anymore. You can have a longer video, and people can can explore your feed and find different forms of content. So it doesn't always have to be short video. So
fantastic.
yeah.
So Sarah, where do we go from here? We talked Instagram. What do we have next? I know we want to make sure we spend some time talking with Ash too.
Exactly.
You talk whatever you want. Don't worry, I'm enjoying this.
So let's run a little faster through the rest. Meta. Talk about Meta. Again, Internet Security Week. So Meta has released a few different pieces. We're going to start with deskless, not voiceless. This is a new report that their data scientists have come up with. They surveyed, I want to say about 7,000 workers in 7 different countries. So these are frontline workers, talking about how they feel either connected or disconnected from the companies that they work for when they don't have a desk, they don't have an email account, they aren't on a Slack channel or a different kind of messaging channel, because they are really the front-facing people of their companies. And so a response to that is to connect WhatsApp into the workplace and find a way to make sure that the folks who are managing the frontline workers and the C-suite people who are setting policies and directions for the companies are in direct communication with their frontline workers. So it's a really interesting post about it. If you have this as an issue at your company or want to improve the communications, we've talked a lot about how we didn't think that Meta Workplace was going to go anywhere, but maybe with this it will. It's sort of that replacement of that old intranet. I don't know if any of you remember those intranets where you were supposed to find your personnel manual and your timesheet and all these other kinds of things. So different way to use Meta Workplace. The other piece is a new safety guide for journalists. And I want to say that, yes, it's very specific for journalists, but one of the reasons why we wanted to use this in the show is that it's a great checklist for anyone to go through how to protect your passwords, reminders about two-factor authentication, and where you can find your login activity to make sure that it's always been you and not someone else trying to crack into your account. Some best practices about managing profiles and pages. This is great if you have a personal profile and like a personal brand page. There's some great tips in there. Also some tips on how to block and report harassment online. So definitely check that out if that is something that is of concern to you. Couple more pieces of meta news. One, they're creating personal boundaries in their VR space. It's kind of sad that we have to do this, but yeah, you can now create a personal bubble around your avatar so that other avatars can't get too close to you, I guess. So it's sort of my dance space, your dance space kind of thing for your avatars in VR. Another piece, Messenger is rolling out some new features this week. They're saying it's in time for Valentine's Day, but really it's just some features that they have been testing over time, finally rolling it out. One is split bill payments. You can also extend your voicemail messages from up to 30 minutes. I don't know who wants to listen to a voice message that's more than 2 minutes, but you can go up to 30 now. They're now calling what used to be vanish mode, they're now calling it disappearing chat. That's a new feature that should be available to everybody. And within Messenger for kids, they've added some fun Valentine stickers and effects that kids can use for Valentine's Day. Okay. So any response to that little bit of lightning round?
I got to say the part about Meta that I think is really important actually are those personal boundaries for Meta. I mean, it's almost like those really, I'm glad they're putting them in now and not much later before everyone else has kind of started using Meta. I definitely think that needs to be something that's there. It's something that's kind of a weird topic, I guess, but I think I think it does make sense. I mean, you need to set personal boundaries if you're going to be in a virtual space. 100% agree with that. And then, going back to your point about Facebook Messenger with extended messages, I look at it. I look at like Facebook owns WhatsApp, and people will record 50. They will record long messages to people to send to them, and then so they basically are recording their conscious thoughts. And so I like the idea of having long messages. On Facebook, I don't know if I really will listen to a 30-minute message. I will do it on WhatsApp, but Facebook, for some reason, I just really won't. So, but I mean, I'm glad they're at least extending it. What do you think, Ash?
Yeah, I don't like voice notes. So this to me, that's just 30 minutes longer than it needs to be. So I don't know. It's a funny one. Like I can't see who's going to send a 30-minute. That's a podcast. That's a full-on thing.
Yeah.
You are right. Yes.
Like at that point, where are we? I don't know. Like, but I'm not a fan of voice notes in general, but I like them. But I just when you get them, there's nothing harder. You have to sit in a quiet space. So I myself could sit in a quiet space for a minute. I'm like, gosh, you could have just sent that in a one-liner. So 30 minutes, I don't know. But again, if they're doing it, people obviously want it. So I'm a big believer of don't do what I like, do what if everyone else is wanting it, then we'll see if it's like in LinkedIn stories, to see if they're a movie in 6 months' time.
Well, and that's a great point. I like the point you made there. When we talk about social media, we talk about social media for business. It's all about doing what the customer wants. It's not about what you want to do. Yeah. So, if your customer, for example, if your customer prefers to, if that's your customer, they prefer to, communicate like that, go in and do it. But if it's something where you're forcing them to adapt to your system and your system is not a normal system, you kind of got to look at what other people are doing. So excellent points.
It makes more sense. I mean, if you think about what would I need a long message from a business, maybe instructions on something, but producing a video for that would be better. Yeah. I think you can just link it to them. Oh, you're having trouble resetting your breaker box. Okay, this is what you need to do. Right. And a video would be easier for that. So we'll see what it has to do. It's certainly, like you said, Christian, Messenger, WhatsApp, especially used broadly around the world for families instead of telephones. So this could be a great way to connect with people. So
definitely could.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, turn it back over to you. What's next?
So wrapping up the news this week, we have some Twitter news. They are rolling out a super follower tab for creators. So you'll actually see a place where your super followers are. And your subscribers, your super followers, can also adjust their notifications so they'll be sure to see all of your content when it comes out. And then the other piece is the sleuth Jane Mansion Wong had a little bit of a preview of perhaps longer content on Twitter. She was given a little pop-up box that said, do you want to create a longer article? And Christian, I think there's another screenshot that actually shows what popped up for that. So we keep hearing it. We keep hearing that Twitter may go longer. We have Twitter Blue. There's other longer form contents with Twitter. So maybe articles will be a thing. Who knows? LinkedIn's certainly done it this year, had some great success with it. And maybe we can break out of that 280 character count.
Yeah, I got to say, out of the topics we've talked about, like at least the Twitter ones, I like the idea of long. Here's the thing. Every platform is borrowing from one another. But I gotta say, if I had to look at all the social media platforms and say, well, which one do I really like is heading in the right direction? Facebook has kind of gone their own way and done Meta. LinkedIn has, started to add a lot more functionality to their site. For example, they've had these longer form articles, and now Twitter is moving into a subscription service where they've taken shorter form like tweets, and now they're trying to offer long form content. I think long form content makes sense, but I think if you look at all the social media platforms, the other side of this is that, we talk about this all the time, Sarah, like building your home on rented land. Mm-hmm. So it's great that I could put this out on Twitter, or I could put it out on LinkedIn, or places like that, but I still want to own something, and I want to own my own property, and I want to have my own website where I have my own content versus when I put it on these platforms, It's great that I can write, long form articles, but that also gets out of the nature of Twitter. And then people are using social to drive back to the longer form content. So, Ash, what do you think about this update?
I think it's exactly the same as what you said. I think to me, it feels like the right place for it to be. I like the Twitter. I'm not, I'm trying to get more into Twitter as a dyslexic guy. Twitter to me is like a nightmare. It's just writing everywhere. But I do like that it's quite unique in what it does. So I do think that it's good, but as I agree with you, Christian, it just doesn't make sense why I'd write an article on Twitter when I could just put it on my blog and drive people to my website. So as you say, who does it serve? I don't think it serves the creator. I think it serves the platform. But I'd want to know whether or not, if I'd maybe to duplicate an article if it had no SEO impact, but that's something I'd want to know before I, would duplicating. I know with LinkedIn, it didn't have any impact, so it's fine. But that's something before I even went near it, I'd probably want to know, does duplicating a blog post cause any issues?
Right. And right now, LinkedIn, like you said, Ash, LinkedIn, also Medium doesn't give you any SEO penalties for duplicate content. So
that's the most important thing, I think. If you have them, then absolutely, again, go back, repurpose, put the content everywhere it can be, as long as you are building it exactly as you said in your own place. But I would definitely want to have 100% clarification that that's the case before I started uploading previous blog posts onto Twitter and destroying your SEO that you've been building for years.
Well, and when you look at like writing long form content, the other thing you also have to consider is that you could still have the long form content on your website, and you could have a short synopsis on Twitter, and then you could have a meta description, for example, for social, so that way it's not necessarily duplicate content. Like you're giving the person on Twitter most of the high level stuff, to where then they can go and do the engagement maybe, or I'm saying maybe, the engagement happened on Twitter, but they could go back to like long form article for something else. But again, it's interesting because it does get away from you having your own website. So and again, I also agree with you, Ash, from an SEO perspective, you got to like figure, like that answer needs to be clear to people. Is it, if I write it on Medium or I write it on LinkedIn or I write it on Twitter, for example, is that seen as duplicate content? And I don't think that question's really been answered. I think you'll have people that'll say, oh no, it doesn't matter. So it really just depends. But
until it's a definitive answer, I get a lot of people that are like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Don't worry. And then like, no, until you say yes, then I won't do it.
Exactly.
Right.
So, okay, Sarah, turn it over to you.
Yes. Well, let's go from the written word to audio. We have a podcasting expert here, Ash Borland, and Ash, let's talk about what podcasting can mean for businesses and what space might it be best in, right? A lot of businesses are thinking about this. Audio has exploded over the last year and a half, 2 years. Has it been 2 years that I've been using Clubhouse? And other tools like Twitter Spaces. We are broadcasting on Twitter Spaces today too. So let's talk about using podcasts for business and start with what types of businesses are best suited for podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant question. And I could talk about this forever. The best businesses, for my opinion, is B2B. I mean, obviously you can make it work in all avenues, but B2B I have seen has the best impact at the fastest scale, because they are experts in the industry. People know each other. They want to hear from each other. And these micro niche communities that we all know there's small celebrities within every industry. And if a podcast is a great way for businesses to establish themselves as the go-to person in there and network. And I just have seen it. Like you said, I have 2 podcasts, and one of them is this specific one, which is a mortgage marketing one, which is so heavily niched in that area that it generates business all the time. And so I would say that B2B is the best place, but it's not going to have the best numbers, but it is definitely going to have the best return.
And isn't that what marketing is all about, right? Putting out the content is great, but you need to convert people. And you may be broadcasting to a wider audience, but really, how many clients do you really need to bring in a year? You want to be top of mind for those that may come in next year or the year after, right? But really, your conversion rate is what matters.
So if I'm not in the B2B space, real quick. So if I'm not in the B2B space, I mean, I could still start a podcast, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you can start a podcast on anything. B2C, B2B is fine. I
Mhm.
just have definitely seen there's a faster return on a B2B. That's
Okay.
what and I've noticed that from because I have two podcasts. One is B2B, one is B2C. The B2C definitely the whole discoverability, the whole search, the whole appearing. You've got to get your name out there a lot more when it's B2C because you're going direct to the consumer. So that's a lot harder. And you come up with a lot more roadblocks, which I would then say you've got to be more of a seasoned social media content creator to know how to overcome some of those roadblocks. Whereas somebody could quite easily just pick up a microphone and call the people in their contact list and go, do you want to come on and chat about this?
Yep.
And you could quite easily create a buzz around that space and make some quick income. But the B2C, I think the B2C ones are the ones that over time, they'll have the larger impact once the key players have played out. But it is definitely, if you're a B2C though, and this sounds a bit bad, but I wouldn't advise doing a podcast if it's a short-term goal.
Mhm.
You know, the short-term goal, you're probably better off doing something like YouTube that can attack a search engine because there's no search and discoverability on it. But if you're looking at being the, you know, if you've got a long-term 3, 4, 5-year play, then yeah, then B2C is probably better. But if you're in B2B, it's 100% you should be doing it because people love to talk about their industry.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I love the point, you just made, which is if you're in the B2B space, like it's a lot easier to go over, talk to your friends and ask them to share things, and chances are they will. I think actually, if you're in the B2C space, you can try some of those tactics as well. Like, you are going to have to reach out to some of the bigger people. But I do think, again, it's a bit of a more uphill battle, but
Yeah, it
great for
works.
both. Fantastic. Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those tips. Ash, you had said there are some hurdles and some barriers, but what are some tips for getting started?
Absolutely. When you get started, one of the first things that you should definitely do as a podcast, if you're looking to start one, is sit down and work out kind of what we spoke about before. What is the concept behind the show? That's something I see really, really often with podcasters is for some reason, the first 10 episodes are the most downloaded. And they're very different to most other social platforms. Again, Christian, going back to what we said before about don't look at what you do, but look at what the broader audience does. I will go to the most recent episode. But data is showing and analytics seem to keep showing that the majority of people will go back and listen from because they see it like an audio book for some reason. So making sure that show that you've spent time really getting the idea, the concept behind it. Is it an interview show? Is it a solo show? Is it what type of format? You guys here with this show is incredible. The format is very clear. So having a clear format, a clear audience, a clear goal you're trying to get for it. Is it to build your network? Is it to build your, to generate leads? What is it for? When you know that, you can then execute from episode 1 on that, which means that episode 1 through to episode 100 still, even though it'll improve and it will get better, it still follows the same train of thought because that is a mistake. And it's a mistake I made. And it's a mistake I see so many people make where they try and figure it out as they're going along with podcasts. And sometimes, if you're going to do that, figure it out on a small show, learn the basics and then maybe move it across. But spending that time to prep, to understand, to speak to your community, what do they want? Instead of just jumping in, it's a bit different to like reels and things like that, where you can just trial it and see what happens because it is that first 10 episodes. And if that's the case, if you're a B2B, then what I would do with that is what I do. I call it key players. So, for me, the key players are who are those 10 episodes? Who are the people who are really valuable to you that are going to draw the biggest audience? And how can also you pitch your service in that first 10? So if you're going to bring on some people who are past clients, have them packed at the front in that first 10, because those are the ones that will convert.
Right. And so when you said you're testing things, how long do you keep going with a formula before you decide to maybe mix it up a little bit?
I think you would probably go, I'd probably want to go 10 to 15 episodes.
Okay.
I think it's okay to shift all the time. I mean, you can always shift, but I think you got to do 10 to 15 so that the person isn't feeling like, wow, 1 minute you're a solo, then you're a this, then you're a that. Like setting out you can do whatever you want as long as you set the cadence for the audience straight away. If it is a solo, if you're doing like Gary Vee is an example of his is all over the place, but the theme is it's all over the place. So we accept it. When we know, we'll accept whatever we can have. And I think that's the hardest thing is if you've got a show that's always half an hour, then stick to it. But you can move around. It is okay, but you've got to give it enough time to have to do that. And I think time is a really big one. A lot with tips with that. Time is a very important thing because the amount of people that will talk for an hour, but they don't think about the prep work behind it, that both prep and post work. So if you want to dedicate an hour for a week to a podcast, then maybe your show is 20 minutes because you've got to think of the 20 minutes before and the 20 minutes after to prep it instead of doing an hour show. And as you said, Christian, about right at the beginning, it's full circle about this is an hour, then you've got to spend an hour looking at the editing and an hour. Those things take up a lot of time, and an hour show can quite quickly eat up to 4 to 5 hours worth of work if you're going to do it properly. And so I do think set your stall out, don't overcommit, less is more, and then just expand as time goes on.
Excellent point about less is more, because a lot of people, they put too much effort into, they put so much effort into something, and then they don't look at the analytics and say, well, you know what, people aren't spending that much time listening to my 1 hour episode. Let's try 45 minutes, 30 minutes. Find what that sweet spot is. So great points.
Right. Now, what about the video aspect? There's some podcasts. I have a few favorite podcasts, and I'm a big YouTube watcher. And so there's times where I'll just watch the YouTube video, or I'll just have it playing, like as if I had the news playing on the television or something like that. So how do you decide, do you have a video version of your podcast?
Yeah, I'm very controversial about this within the podcast space. I don't think it's a decision that should be made. I think it should happen. I think it should be a video. I think every podcast should have a video podcast. Now, is that a opinion that's shared by most people in my industry and my colleagues? No. But I think that is an outdated opinion. I think just like you just said, Sarah, that's how I consume podcasts. I watch a lot of them. Do I look at them? No. But YouTube has the discoverability. There are wonderful platforms out there. Literally, we're using it right now. StreamYard. I use that every single day for mine. There are platforms out there that making a video podcast is very, very simple. And to not use it, in my opinion, is something to not have a video element to your show is going to be foolish. And I think as the next 3 to 5 years change, and as the podcast industry changes and starts to evolve and kind of come up to where it should be, I think video podcasting is going to be a necessity. It's not going to be the exception. It will be the rule. And so if you're starting now, I say to everybody, if you're starting now, get comfortable on camera and start on camera. That being said, there will be loads of people who are podcasters who will tell you I'm wrong. See me, if this would be a Gary Vee clip, see me in 10 years when I tell you that I'm right. But we'll see. Right.
Well, as you said a little when we were talking about shorts too, is that you get all that Google juice. Exactly. If you post onto YouTube, right? You can really SEO it up.
100%.
And that's a great point. I mean, just like, so I'll just gonna give you from like past, like, so iTunes, for example, when they started having podcasting on their platform, they offered video podcast, and a lot of people didn't do them. Yeah. And they didn't do, and I will tell you, just speaking from experience, I started an audio podcast, and I thought about doing tutorials as my video podcast. And I said, oh, well, I really don't know. And this was years ago. And I said, you know what? I don't know if this is worth it. It doesn't seem like a lot of people use it. But fast forward, you're absolutely right. Like, it's going to probably become a necessity that you need to be doing video. And then the podcast, it's the whole repurposing thing. Make it easy for your customer or whoever your target customer is to consume your content. And that could be an audio podcast. In this case, like you mentioned, Sarah, earlier, we're doing Twitter Spaces, provide you got the tools out there, just put it out there. So
that's something that I'm a big advocate of. And that's what is very much putting money where my mouth is. I believe that for myself, for example, I do a daily podcast as well as the mortgage one once a week. I do a daily 10-minute show called the Podcast Creators Hub, and I put it on Instagram, TV now, not that old video. Instagram, I put it on YouTube, I put it on LinkedIn, I put it everywhere. And the reason why I do that is it's everybody is consumed in different platforms at different times. And the reality is, and someone says, well, no one's going to sit and watch say, for example, it's an hour. I don't know. But if it's an hour, they're not going to sit and watch Instagram for an hour. No, they're not. But they might watch 5-10 minutes of it and then go, oh, I'll go and subscribe to that show. All of it is driving back to the RSS at the end of the day.
Mhm.
But letting people consume in different ways is, in my opinion, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but that's how it should be done. It's about boosting the discoverability of your show.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. I watch Instagram for more than an hour sometimes.
Yeah. So do I, to be fair.
I know. Kristen and I were joking yesterday. I was like, oh, I've have this great reel content right now. He's like, yeah, I don't watch reels that much. And I was like, oh, well,
it comes down to, it comes down to like how much time you have and what you can put your time into. So, you can consume, but there's only so much you can consume. And then if you're like, hey, I need to create content, you got to spend the time actually creating it. So,
right. So, Ash, you've talked about distributing video wise. Let's talk about distributing podcast wise, because this is someone who is maybe considering podcasting, doesn't really know how it all works, right? How you get onto all of those different podcasting platforms. And that's actually one of our tools this week. We're going to talk about Captivate. So what is a distribution model, and what tools do you use?
Yeah, so it's a funny one. You're very right with this. For some reason it's just very confusing for a lot of people, and it's very easy to do once you understand it. But I think it turns a lot of people away. The way I try to describe it to people is there are 3 steps to making a podcast. There's you producing the podcast, so there's you recording it, using something like StreamYard to give video and audio, whatever it may be, and then that's step 1. And then people automatically think of step 3. Now, step 3 is where it's Apple, it's Spotify, it's Google, and that's what we call podcast directories. But there's a middleman in podcasting, which is not the same as any other kind of social platform, because normally you would upload direct to the directories. But with podcasting, you have to upload to a thing called a podcast host. And there are tons of hosts out there for this, but this is effectively where your podcast lives. And your podcast, they'll create what they call an RSS feed, which stands for really simple syndication. That's from off the top of my head. And that effectively is your small website, which then distributes to those other platforms. This is the bit that gets people very confused. They're very, very simple to use, but that bit always stumps people. Now, there are tons of options out there to do that. There are free options. There are paid options. I myself use Buzzsprout for mine, but I've used multiple ones before. But there are free like Anchor. You've got to choose the hosting platform that's right for you. And when it comes to choosing hosting platforms, a couple of things I would say is like, judge it on what you want the show to be, not what it currently is right now. So I made the mistake of using a free software when I first started. It was not a mistake, but looking back at it, I wish I hadn't. Investing in the software, the hosting software at the beginning is good because it will allow you to have a way more extensive features for business. So if you're a B2B and things like that, the ability to run your own ads on it and stuff, dynamic content, and access to to like embedding players onto websites, all of this stuff comes in the paid package. So you get what you pay for. However, if you are also thinking about starting a podcast and trialing it, then check out the free ones. There's like Anchor, which is owned by Spotify, absolutely fine. And you can always port it over later, but you need to have that hosting platform. There's no way around it. I often get the question, how do I upload it to Spotify? And it's like, that's not actually what you do. You upload it to the host. So you've got production, host, directories. They're the 3 steps. And that's the way you would do it.
Excellent.
Right.
So,
and remind us the tool that you said you used.
So I use Buzzsprout, and only recently shifted to Buzzsprout. Like a year ago, but I started on Buzzsprout and did the silly thing that everyone does years ago, where I said, "Oh, it's $12 a month. I'm not paying $12 a month when I can get it for free." And I hugely regret that. I massively regret that because I spent a lot more than $12 a month on it now. But it is one of those where the functionality for my business, we talk about this from a business point of view, B2B point of view, the free one just doesn't have the same scope.
Right.
But my wife, she uses the free one because she's not trying to make a business from it. It's a hobby. So it really goes against what you want to do. I use Buzzsprout.
Right.
Yeah. And excellent points. I mean, and I guess I like the point that you made about think about where you're going. It's that whole like Wayne Gretzky thing, I think, right? Where it's like skate to where you want the puck to go, not where it was at, for example. and I think I totally butchered that quote, but from a podcasting perspective, I mean, a lot of people look at it. I like how you broke it down because it's actually super simple. And a lot of people when I first started, I was running the same issue of trying to figure out how do you actually how do you distribute this? Because the tools were not as clear at the time. They've gotten a lot more clear now. And, and I think and there are some really powerful tools that you get also when you pay for these services. You don't just get for example, like Captivate gives you, they give you certain numbers for downloads. They give you now, you can run ads in the middle of your podcast very easily. They make it easy to distribute to all these directories. They have ways for you now to insert links and things like that in the player itself. So they're very powerful tools that those free services are not necessarily going to give you access to.
Right.
So. You get what you pay for, 100%. And I think that's like Captivate, I would check that out as well, because there's so many of them, but they all do different things. And so it's all about what it is you want, so a lot of mine as a guy who makes content for podcasters to teach podcasters how to do it, I had to look at one that was, okay, what's the best price for money? And also one that is not so complex that businesses don't need it. There's different levels. And so, you definitely have to pick the one that works for you, but invest in it. If I always say to people, if you're not willing to spend $12, $15, $20 a month, should you really be doing a podcast? It's one of those, because it's going to get expensive as time goes on. It's a false sense of security.
Right.
Fantastic. This has been a really great show, by the way, I got to say. So Sarah, any other last points you want to make?
No, we'll just to remind everybody, we will put all the links to the news pieces and certainly links to find Ash in our blog post that will come out this weekend, and certainly up on our Twitter account at Social Chefs. And anything else, Christian?
Not much, actually. I just want to say, if you want to connect with Ash, I'm just going to, so the best place to connect with Ash is what? YouTube, right, Ash?
That's the one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So Podcast Creators Hub. Sarah, you're on LinkedIn, right?
LinkedIn. Actually, you can find me across social media, even that teeny tiny Instagram account that I mentioned at Sarah Monroe VT.
Fantastic. And I'm Christian Karasevich at Social Chefs on all the social platforms as well. Just one quick reminder, we're going to have another show next week. We do this every single week, by the way. Next Thursday with Agatha Paulak. We're going to have her join us at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time next Thursday. And it's going to be a great show. We've had her on before. She's super knowledgeable. So we're always excited to have everyone join us back. So with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for episode 330 of Social Chatter, where we talked primarily about Instagram content management tools, but there's also so much more excellent social media news you want to listen to. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we will see you all on a future episode. Bye.